This is the sew along for the Greenstyle trail jacket. In this tutorial, we will be making the long sleeve, half zip, blocked, collared view with hemmed sleeves. For the front bodice, cut 2 B4 upper center front collar neck blocked pieces, mirrored, 1 B5 lower center front blocked bodice on the fold following the more narrow half zip cut line, 1 B6 lower center front pocket on the fold following the half zip line, and also cut 2 C6 pocket bands. Cut 2 B8 side front collar neck blocked bodice pieces, mirrored. For the back bodice, cut 1 B10 center back blocked on the fold and 2 B11 side back mirrored. Cut 2 S1 sleeve mirrored. For the collar, cut 2 C1 back collars and 2 C2 side collars mirrored. Cut 1 back collar and 2 side collars in knit interfacing. Additional supplies include a 12 to 14 inch zipper. The zipper can be closed or separating, and number 3 or number 5 based on the weight of your fabric. Cut 2 1/2 inch strips of knit interfacing, and optionally pressure tape can be used to help with zipper install. Place the side back right side together along the side curve of the center back. The ends of the side back piece are angled to lay flush against the center back curved sides. Align at the hem and at the top and pin in multiple locations along the edge. Repeat on the other side. All seams for the trail jacket will be sewn at a 3/8 inch seam allowance using a stretch stitch or serger. If desired, you may top stitch each seam. When choosing to top stitch, consider the weight of the fabric being used. For example, a lighter top weight fabric would do better with a single thread chain stitch rather than a 4-thread cover stitch. Place the sleeve right side together with the back curve of the sleeve aligned along the back arm side of the bodice. Pin in multiple locations along the arm side and repeat on the other side. Sew along the seam, top stitching if desired. Place the side front right side together along the front of the arm side curve. Pin in multiple locations along the curve. Repeat on the other side and sew along the edge. Turn the jacket inside out. Put the jacket right side together, aligning the sleeve and front and back bodice. Pin in multiple locations along the edge. When aligning the underarm seam, it is suggested to nestle the seam allowances so they face in opposite directions. This will reduce bulk at that seam and ensure that the seams align properly. Sew down the sleeve and side seam. At the hem, be sure to sew directionally along the seam allowance flange. Do not cut it off. The flange will allow the curved hem to sit nicely during hemming. Repeat on the other side. Take the non-interfaced outer back collar and mark the center. Mark the center of the back bodice as well. Place the collar right side together along the back neckline. The ends of the collar will align to the edge of the front side piece. The collar will stretch slightly to meet up. Pin in multiple locations along the neckline. Sew with a stretch stitch or serger, again stretching the collar slightly as you go. Fold and press the pocket bands C6 in half along the length. Place the pocket bands along the side curve of the pocket opening B6. Pin or clip with the points at the top and bottom of the pocket opening curve. The band will be stretched slightly to fit. Repeat on the other side and sew with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, stretching the band slightly as you go. Place the pocket with assembled bands on top of the lower blocked front. Pin along the sides and curve. Optionally, baste with a long stitch along the side edges. Iron 1/2 inch wide strips of knit interfacing to the wrong side of the center edge on the upper center front pieces. Also, iron interfacing to the wrong side of the two side collars. Finish the bottom curve of the side collars using a serger or finishing stitch. While optional, it can be very helpful to use pressure tape to install a zipper. Adhere pressure tape to the right side of the zipper along the edge of the zipper tape. Unzip the zipper and pull the paper covering off the pressure tape. Align the top of the zipper teeth 3/8 inch to 1/2 inch from the top of the collar. Align the edge of the zipper tape down the center edge of the bodice. Sew down the length of the zipper 1/4 to 3/8 inch from the zipper teeth using a longer 3-stitch length. Repeat on the other side, ensuring that the bottom of the front and top of the collar align. Make sure not to pull the bodice pieces as it is being laid down on top of the zipper. Doing so will result in puckering and stretching. Once the zipper has been sewn on with one pass, it's time to install the inner side collar. Place the side collar right side down on the front bodice. Check to ensure the correct side piece is being used. The angles look similar, but there's a difference. The zipper will be sandwiched between the pieces with teeth facing away from the center line. Pin in multiple locations. Turn the finished bottom edge of the inner collar up towards the top of the collar and sew up the center line of the collar on top of your original stitch line. Then sew across the top of the collar with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Clip the corner at a 45-degree angle. Next, we top stitch the zipper. Again, we suggest placing presser tape on the wrong side of the zipper tape along the edge of the tape. Remove the paper covering and flip the zipper and collar right side out as worn. Top stitch along the zipper with a 1/4 to 3/8 inch seam allowance using a longer 3.5 stitch length. Be sure to catch the zipper on the wrong side of the jacket. It can be a good idea to gently pull the fabric up and away from the zipper to prevent puckers as you sew. Once both sides of the zipper are top stitched, place the basted bottom right side together to the upper bodice. Align the bottom center with the zipper and at the sides. Pin in multiple locations along the curve. Before sewing, if using a serger, do a test seam to verify the correct differential for the direction of the fabric. With the correct differential, the seam should not have waving. Sew along the curve with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Finish the bottom edge of the inner collar with a serger or finishing stitch. Align the interfaced inner back collar right side together to the outer collar of the assembled bodice along the top edge. Sew with a 3/8 inch seam allowance using a stretch stitch. With the assembled jacket right side out, place the assembled front right side together along the front curve. Start at the bottom, aligning with the bottom hems. Pin in multiple places along the curve. The pieces should fit at a 1-to-1 ratio. The bottom of the inner back collar will align with the bottom of the inner side collar. The back and side collars will also meet up at the very top of the collar as well. It's recommended to nest this seam so the allowances face in opposite directions to reduce bulk. The curve of the blocking will align for both the front and side bodice pieces. The seam allowance from the outer collar should face towards the top of the jacket. Sew from the inner collar down to the hem with a 3/8 inch stretch seam. A note about the pocket. The clearance between the pocket band and the side hem is minimal. This is intentional to avoid disrupting the lines of the jacket. Because of this, be careful to catch only the ends of the pocket band in the 3/8 inch seam allowance. We don't want to sew the pocket closed. It's recommended to pull and pin the length of the pocket band out of the way as you sew. Sew from the inner collar down the length to the hemline with a stretch stitch. Remember to pull the pocket band out of the way as you sew over the lower portion of the bodice. Repeat the process on the other side. Turn the jacket wrong side out for this step. Turn the jacket inside out. Pressure tape can be very helpful in controlling the inner collar as it is sewn down. Keep in mind the inner collar will need to stretch slightly to fit the neck opening. Instead of using a solid piece of pressure tape, multiple smaller pieces will allow the collar to stretch. Place pressure tape to the right side of the collar within the finished seam allowance. Remember, only sew along the back collar, not the side collar for now. Pull off the paper cover. Turn the seam allowance and press the inner collar seam line along the seam line of the bodice and outer collar. Additional pins can be used to hold the gaps in place. Top stitch using a walking foot with a longer 3.5 stitch length or a stretch stitch. Remember, only sew along the back collar, not the side collar for now. For the front collar, hand stitch with a slip stitch to secure the inner side collar with a nearly invisible stitch along the front collar line. Turn the jacket inside out. Pin the inner collar down with the seam allowance tucked inside the collar. To perform a slip stitch, start on either side of the inner collar. All stitching should be concealed. Think of slip stitching as dashes and dots. Take a long stitch from within the seam allowance of the collar, and then take a very short stitch on the front center piece, grabbing only a few threads. Verify that you cannot see the needle on the right side of the bodice. If you can, repeat the process, taking fewer threads. Repeat the dashes and dots along the side collar. When you have completed the length of the side collar using your slip stitch, secure the thread with a knot. And with that, you have an invisible inner collar with only small stitch dots on the front. The final steps are to turn and press the hem of the bodice and sleeve 5/8 inch to the wrong side. Top stitch with a stretch stitch or cover stitch. Lastly, we recommend steaming all serged seams to press out any wavy seam lines. And with that, you've completed your trail jacket. Please tag us with the hashtag GSTrailJacket. Happy sewing, friends!